Good evening, my friends. This is Paul, and now that I just finished reviewing Dual Destinies, finally, I decided I might as well finish out the Ace Attorney package and finish the last unreviewed Ace Attorney game that was released in the United States until we get the promised new Ace Attorney for the Nintendo Switch. And that is Ace Attorney Investigations Miles Edgeworth for the DS. Strangely enough, the only classic Ace Attorney title that has not been ported to the 3DS yet. And likely never will, considering all the rumors that 2018 will be the 3DS's last year. So, Ace Attorney Investigations takes a radically different turn as far as the gameplay goes. It's one of those games where when you first hear about it, you're likely going to cringe a lot because its main selling point is you're investigating and you don't do any courtroom cases, which initially for me was a huge turnoff because I've made it quite clear that I cannot stand investigations. They're bearable in Dual Destinies and Spirit of Justice, but they're just overall just not at all fun to do, except in Layton vs. Wright. Ace Attorney Investigations slightly makes it a little more engaging by allowing Prosecutor Edgeworth to freely walk around the scenes and investigate objects by walking up to them, rather than clicking on them on a screen like an interactive PC game. Edgeworth is typically accompanied by a partner to sort of be this game's equivalent of Phoenix's courtroom assistant, and that partner is typically someone from a past Ace Attorney title, though most of the time Edgeworth is accompanied by this young teenage self-proclaimed thief of justice named Kay Faraday. And even though we still don't get Maya in this game, which is actually understandable because you're playing as Edgeworth, you're not playing as Phoenix, she's sort of like the Edgeworth equivalent of Maya, and it's nice. Their interactions are cool, and I kind of wish Kay would return in a future Ace Attorney game. It would certainly make interactions between Maya, Athena, and Kay very interesting. Now, the game may not take place in the courtroom. I mean, you can go to the courtroom in one case, but you can't actually, like, get behind the bench and prosecute a case. But it does have what makes the courtrooms fun, surprisingly. The way that they make it work is that because Edgeworth is a prosecutor, he'll do a confrontation with someone suspicious, and then that'll come in the form of the person trying to defend themselves. And then what would normally say cross-examination on the top of the screen now says rebuttal, where Edgeworth can just totally destroy the other person's logic. And that's where the contradictions come in. So Edgeworth can open up the planner, because there's no more court record, find a piece of evidence, and still be able to shout, "Objection!" in his more refined manner of speaking than Phoenix's. You can even press the witnesses for more information, just like you can in the courtroom. This is a great way of not only handling the lack of a courtroom really well, but it's also a great way of removing those incessantly annoying Cyclocks. It's almost as if the courtroom has replaced Cyclocks, and that is amazing. There are a couple of other neat gadgets that are used to make sure that Edgeworth stands on his own. You know, being a totally different character than Phoenix, obviously he's got to have his own tricks. He's constantly accompanied by the police force, making investigations flow more smoothly than they normally would, because he doesn't have to get the approval of the police to do things, which made backtracking in the old games a chore. Heck, sometimes the police are even, like, actively walking next to him in some cases. He can also enter what's called logic mode, where he'll get pieces and bits of logic throughout the case, and eventually you can enter a mode where he can see, like, how one piece of logic relates to the other, and that'll help him proceed through an investigation. This is a really cool mechanic that has some nice visual flair for a DS title, but one thing I was kind of disappointed at is that you can only connect 2 pieces of logic at a time. You would think that a mastermind such as Edgeworth would be able to piece together this gigantic, amazing logic tree, but maybe the fact that he's a sensing type and not an intuitive type means that he's not going to be nearly as big picture thinking as Phoenix Wright is. He also has a completely different personality, very calm, collected, hardly ever raises his voice, typically only when he's embarrassed. And he does a good job of being blunt and honest. He also doesn't show too much emotion, which contrasts with Phoenix having vastly over-exaggerated facial expressions in the courtroom, though Edgeworth has his fair share, but typically I'd like to think that his are much more fair. Like, he gets some people that really play dirty, and even a mastermind such as him can't necessarily keep up. The interactions between him and his sidekicks are often priceless, because he's the calm, soothing voice of reason, and they're just like... Heck, one of them even asks what logic is in the first place, and I can just see the gears in his brain going, "Oh, why must I put up with such mediocrity?" Not to mention that he still has the inner monologues that Phoenix does, except they're Edgeworth style, and so it's nice to know what's going on inside that mind of his, when you're typically seeing him from an antagonistic point of view in the main Ace Attorney games. The biggest problem I had with Ace Attorney Investigations was the story. As much as they try to do cool things with the gameplay, the game just really loses a lot of its charm by having a bland and oftentimes confusing story. Now, my best friend thoroughly disagreed with me on this, so maybe it's just him, but personally I found the last case to be the weakest finale in Ace Attorney history, and the other cases weren't much better. It just sort of seemed like nothing ever reached the satisfying resolution that the Ace Attorney titles did. No, never at any point is this game nearly as bad as Apollo Justice. The writing, the controls, the plot twists, they're well written, and the game has plenty of amazing laughs that have had me like almost side-hurting laughing out loud. And the characterization is phenomenal. It's just, I kind of wish the overarching plot was far less bland and forgettable. In fact, I barely even remember most of this game's storyline, and that's not something you typically say about an Ace Attorney game. Other than that, if you're not much of a story buff and just like the game for its gameplay, well, you could have an enjoyment, just don't expect it to last going into the final case. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this final, for now, video in the Ace Attorney series of games until the one for the Switch comes out. And until the next time, keep the faith, stay epic, and God bless. Bye.